So here it is, Cinematic Jesus, here to save the movies of 2020. Now I know what you're waiting for, and no, I refuse to do that whole reverse time thing that all the other reviewers have been doing in their Tenet reviews. Now I know what you're waiting for, and no, I refuse to do that whole reverse well, shit. Tenet is brought to us by director Christopher Nolan and stars John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. We follow John David Washington's the protagonist, yeah, that's his name, as he navigates a secret world of crime and espionage and timey-wimey shit. And really, that's about all I want to say about this movie's plot, for multiple different reasons, mainly just due to spoilers. Just know that there's some espionage-y shit going on with some timey-wimey fuckery as well. Tenet has been long heralded as the movie that is going to fix theaters in 2020. It was one of the holdouts that refused to come to VOD when everyone else was. Some would say because it just has to be seen in cinemas. Others might say that Christopher Nolan's ego is too big to release something on VOD. And others would venture as far to say that this movie had a huge fucking budget exceeding $200 million fucking dollars, and the studio just couldn't take the risk of releasing it on VOD and losing all that money. Either way, they held out. Everybody's been looking forward to it. They've pushed the date back multiple times, and now finally, here it is. So is it Christopher Nolan's best work? Is it the movie to save 2020? Is it Cinematic Jesus? In a word, no, it is not. However, I don't know what movie would be all that shit. What it is, though, is just a fucking movie, and I'm gonna talk about it. First and foremost, this is a pretty fucking movie. Like, everything on screen looks fucking fantastic. You can absolutely see that $200+ million budget. From the cinematography, the special effects, just the fucking shot composition, everything here looks really good. Suffice to say, from a technical standpoint, this movie is very competent, beyond competent. It is beautiful. The action scenes in this movie are definitely a highlight. Not because there's a lot of shooty bang bang huge explosions or anything, but because the way these scenes are shot and executed. They're exciting and interesting to watch, and most of them have stakes that you understand and can totally get behind. The car chase scene and hallway fight scene that we've seen in the trailer would definitely be the highlights of the bunch. Both use the reverse time plot point heavily. You've got stuff going forward and backward and just interacting with each other. It's just fucking crazy, but it's shot so well that you are never confused as to what's going on in these scenes. These are extremely complex scenes that are put together beautifully and very exciting. However, the final big action scene doesn't quite live up to the scenes that came before. It's not bad so much as it's just not as exciting. It looks great, and it's got these wonderful sweeping shots. I mean, just everything in this movie looks great, but this scene in particular, you can tell there's just shit going on all over the place. And a lot of it looks practical, and the fact that they were able to orchestrate all of these moving parts into a cohesive narrative in this last scene is kind of amazing unto itself. But it doesn't change the fact that the scene as a whole just isn't as exciting as the rest of the movie, and that really kind of sucks because it's the end of the fucking movie. As a whole, though, the movie looks great, and the action scenes overall are all very well done and exciting for the most part. The performances here are also all fantastic. John David Washington proves once again he is a phenomenal actor. And in this, he's about as close to an American James Bond as I think we'll ever get. This motherfucker is super cool, charismatic, confident, and suave all the way through. And his performance is definitely one of the highlights of this film. Kenneth Branagh plays our villain, and god damn, this motherfucker's evil. I never knew Branagh could come off as so menacing and just mean. This is a great villain that you love to hate. However, his motivations are questionable. But more on that stuff in a minute. Robert Pattinson shows up as well, and per usual, he is really good. And while he is throughout the movie, he's not in it quite as much as I expected him to be. And he really only shows up whenever the plot needs a nudge in the right direction. It got to the point that whenever he showed up, I knew, okay, we're about to find out something new. Everyone else does a fantastic job as well, which isn't a surprise when it comes to Christopher Nolan's films. He typically gets really good performances out of all of his actors, and Tenet is no different there. So now it's time to get into the meat of things here. Let me start by saying that I really like the world that they created here, and the whole inversion plot point, which is what they call reversing time in the movie, is very interesting. There's some really neat, compelling, interesting stories that could be told within this world. Unfortunately, Tenet isn't one of those. Let me explain. The story of Tenet is not really that complex. Now, it comes off like it is, but it's really more the execution and less the story that they're telling. I didn't really have a problem with the story of this movie. As I said, it's not really that complex. It does have some complexities to it, but overall, it's not that hard to understand the story of this movie if you had all the information that you should have. And herein lies my biggest issue with this movie. It holds information from you that you should have to understand what's going on. And I don't mean in a way so as to later on have a big reveal, so you don't have some information and then later on you're like, oh, now I get it. No, that's not it at all. There are basic plot points, basic things it keeps from you, or at least it doesn't convey in a very good way, that make it very difficult to understand not necessarily what is going on, but why it's going on, especially in the first half of the movie. Now, going into this movie, I had already heard that, hey, if you're gonna watch this movie, you really have to pay attention, especially the first half, because it's more difficult to understand. Now, I always pay attention to movies anyway, but I knew that going in, so I made sure to pay special attention, especially to the first half of this movie. And I can confidently say that there is no reason for this movie to be this confusing at all, but especially in that first half. This isn't a hand-holding thing either. I don't need everything spoon-fed to me. But you do have to give us a certain level of information when telling a story so that we can go along for that ride with you. Because it doesn't seem like you're going on this ride with Tenet, it seems like you're being drug along by Tenet. And it didn't have to be that way. It's as if it purposely made things overly complex in its execution as to make it seem like it was smarter than it really is. This story is not that complex, especially in the first half of the movie when most of the confusing shit is. That's probably the most basic part of the movie. It didn't have to be that confusing, but it goes out of its way to make it confusing. And the biggest thing it does to do that is leave out information. It doesn't clearly convey why our characters are doing things. And you spend a good portion of this movie knowing what's happening, but not why. And when you don't know why your characters are doing something, it is hard to get fully invested in what's going on screen. Now, there's inevitably going to be people that say, oh no, you just didn't get it. You don't understand the complexities of the story and some bullshit like that. And no, I do get it. I understand this movie. I was not confused by the story of this movie or what was going on. I was confused by why the fuck they executed it in such a messy way, especially in that first half. The movie seems like it's going out of its way to be confusing, just to be confusing, because that's what we expect from a Christopher Nolan movie now. I like Christopher Nolan movies as much as the next guy. I don't necessarily think he's God's gift to cinema or anything, but I do think he's a very good director. And he's made some really good time-twisty movies in the past, one of which being my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, Memento. And I like movies that make me think. I like movies that challenge me to use my brain. But that's not what Tenet's doing. It's not challenging me to use my brain. It's demanding that you pay attention to something that it has not given you all the basic information to. And I'm sure on like a second or third watch, you can probably like see some shit in the background or some offline that somebody said that just kind of adds something new or sheds some new light on the situation, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I kind of get it a little bit better now. But that's not how fucking movies are supposed to be. When I can go back knowing what the fuck is going on and ID things in the background or some cryptic shit that someone said because I have the knowledge of what the fuck is going on, that doesn't count, because you would never pick those things out without having that fucking knowledge that you have, having had watched the fucking movie already. The movie was really frustrating in that aspect. Movies are not supposed to be this difficult to watch. They are entertainment. I enjoy something that asks me to think, but this isn't asking me to think. It's asking me to prophesize why the fuck shit is happening out of thin air. And I know there will be people that will defend this movie to the fucking grave, and good for you. I am thrilled to death that you enjoyed this film. And while I too did enjoy aspects of it, I did not enjoy the execution of its story. It's pointlessly confusing and self-indulgent at times. And looking at Nolan's previous films, I did notice something different about this one than many of his others. Not all, but many. And that is that Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother, did not have any part in the writing process of this film. If you look back at Nolan's previous movies, you will see that his brother Jonathan did play a heavy part in the writing process of most of his films. As I said, not all, but most. And I think that might be part of it. I think that Jonathan Nolan's writing expertise is severely missed here. Christopher Nolan is absolutely a great filmmaker. He's made some fantastic films, and the man knows how to put some shit down on celluloid. And I'm not saying he's like a total hack at writing or anything, but perhaps his brother Jonathan was the one with the real talent when it came to the writing. Or at least maybe he's the one that kept his brother reeled in. I don't know for sure, but what I do know is that this is definitely one of Nolan's most messy films to date. Guys, at the end of the day, Tenet was okay. I know I ragged on it a lot there at the end, but it's not a terrible film. It definitely has its high points, but it's also got some major low points in the story department too. The movie looks fucking amazing, has some fantastic performances, and an interesting premise, and even the story is interesting when you have the information you need to follow it. However, the messy ass execution of the story, and at times its own self-indulgence, really does taint a lot of the experience. It doesn't ruin it by any means. The movie's nowhere near like a fucking dumpster fire or anything, but it's also not up to the caliber that we have come to expect from a Christopher Nolan film now. There will be those that disagree, and hey, that's fine. This is my opinion. And in my opinion, Tenet's just not worth going out there and seeing. However, it is worth checking out on streaming.
Across the street.
As stated before, this movie's not terrible, but it's not amazing either. And while it doesn't live up to the pedigree that we've come to expect from this director, when it's available, if you check this one out on streaming, I don't think you'll be too disappointed. You might be a bit confused for the first half, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. So there it is, guys, my review of Tenet. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. Probably be a lot of those after this review. And as always, stay sexy, London.
You want to crash a plane? Well, how big a plane? That part is a little dramatic.
This movie deals heavily with the reversing of time, and whenever we get to talking about that, I start to wonder, what would you do if you were able to reverse time or go back in time or whatever? I mean, would you do something good? Would you do something bad? Or would you just fuck a bunch of shit up accidentally? Maybe you go forward too far and screw something up that you didn't mean to and get stuck. Or go back too far and, I mean, I don't really know what the implications of that would be. What would I do? How far back would I go? Could I control it? Oh man, I went back too far.